The winter of 1868 had been merciless in the northern Arizona mountains. Snow piled high against the small log cabin, nestled among towering pines, a lonely outpost of civilization in a wilderness that forgave no weakness. Inside, Elsa Fox stirred the dying embers in the fireplace, her blonde hair gleaming in the fading light as she cast worried glances toward the single window where darkness was already claiming the forest. "Mama, are the wolves coming again?" The small voice came from the corner where 3-year-old Ryan sat clutching his wooden horse, blue eyes wide with a fear no child his age should know. Elsa forced a smile, though her own heart quickened at the memory of last night's howls closer than ever before. "They're just singing to the moon, my love. Remember what I told you about staying inside when they sing?" Ryan nodded solemnly. His small face, so much like his father's, carried an old soul's understanding. Since Thomas had been taken by the fever 8 months ago, it had been just the two of them, mother and son, against the world. Elsa had learned to hunt, to chop wood, to keep the cabin standing through storms that threatened to tear it from its foundations. What she couldn't do was silence the growing chorus of hungry predators that circled closer with each passing night. "Time for sleep now," she whispered, lifting Ryan into the small bed they shared for warmth. She tucked the quilts around him, humming a lullaby her own mother had sung from a life that seemed to belong to someone else now, the schoolteacher's daughter from Boston, who had followed her husband west with dreams of adventure and prosperity. "Tell me about Papa's mountain," Ryan mumbled, eyes already heavy with sleep. Elsa stroked his hair. "Your papa said this mountain had the tallest trees and the clearest streams in all the territory. He said a man could build something here that would stand forever." Her voice caught. Thomas had been wrong about that, as he had been wrong about so many things. But she wouldn't burden Ryan with that truth. Not yet. Once the boy's breathing deepened into sleep, Elsa retrieved her husband's rifle from beneath the bed. She checked the chamber. 2 bullets left. The snow had made the 10-mile journey to town impossible for nearly 3 weeks now. 2 bullets to protect her child from whatever might come. The first howl pierced the night just as the clock struck 9. Elsa stiffened, recognizing a different tone from previous nights. Closer, hungrier. The second call came from another direction, then another. They were surrounding the cabin. She placed more wood on the fire, willing the flames higher. Animals feared fire. Thomas had taught her that much. As the light strengthened, shadows danced on the walls, and for a moment Elsa imagined her husband standing there, strong and certain as he had been before illness hollowed him out. "I'm doing my best, Thomas," she whispered to the empty space. "But I don't know if it's enough." A sharp crack against the door startled her so badly she nearly dropped the rifle. Something heavy had thrown itself against the wood. The old hinges groaned. Another impact followed, and Elsa saw the door frame splinter slightly. "Mama!" Ryan's frightened voice came from the bed. "Stay there, darling. Don't move." Elsa positioned herself between the door and her son, raising the rifle. Her hands trembled, but she steadied them through sheer will. She had never fired at anything larger than a rabbit, but tonight she would do what was necessary. The third impact nearly broke the latch. Through a widening crack, Elsa caught a glimpse of gleaming eyes and bared teeth, a massive grey wolf, gaunt from winter's hunger. Behind it, at least 3 more dark shapes moved in the snow. "Go away!" she shouted, hoping her voice might frighten them. The wolf responded with a growl that vibrated through the timber walls. Just as the fourth impact began to split the door from its frame, another sound cut through the night. A sharp, piercing whistle followed by what Elsa recognized as an Apache war cry. The wolves' attention diverted, their growls turning to whines of confusion. Through the crack, Elsa witnessed a shadow moving faster than seemed possible, a man wielding what appeared to be a long knife. The lead wolf lunged at the newcomer, who sidestepped with extraordinary grace before driving his blade into the animal's side. The wounded creature yelped and retreated, but the others closed in. For what seemed an eternity, Elsa watched in stunned silence as the stranger fought the pack alone, his movements precise and deadly. Blood stained the snow as one wolf fell, then another. The remaining 2 circled warily, before finally retreating into the darkness, their howls fading into the distance. Only then did the man approach the door. "They will return with others," a deep voice said, in accented but clear English. "You must let me inside." Elsa hesitated, the rifle still raised. Through the crack she could make out copper skin and long black hair, an Apache warrior, here in territory where his people were hunted like the very wolves he had just fought. "How do I know you won't kill us once you're inside?" she demanded, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. "If that was my intention, I would wait for the wolves to finish their work," he replied simply. "Your door will not survive another attack." From the bed, Ryan's voice called out, "Mama, is it the wolf fighter?" Something in her child's innocent question broke through Elsa's fear. She lowered the rifle and unlatched what remained of the door. The man who entered moved with the silent grace of a predator himself, but his eyes held no malice as they swept the small cabin, assessing. Blood dripped from a gash on his forearm, and his breaths came in controlled bursts of steam in the cold air. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with features carved from the same unforgiving stone as the mountains themselves. Across his left cheek ran a scar that disappeared beneath his jawline, an old wound that had healed white against his copper skin. "I am Baishan," he said, closing the damaged door behind him and bracing it with the chair Elsa had placed nearby. "The wolves have been following me for 2 days. I did not mean to bring them to your home." "You're hurt," Elsa observed, noticing how he favored his right side. "It is nothing." His dark eyes met hers without flinching. "You have a child. The pack knows this. They will not stop now that they have found easy prey." Ryan had slipped from the bed and now stood half-hidden behind his mother, peering up at the warrior with undisguised fascination. "Did you fight all the wolves? Like in the stories?" A flicker of something, surprise perhaps, crossed Baishan's face. He crouched down to the boy's level, his movement causing him to wince slightly from his injuries. "Not all of them. The clever ones ran away." "My papa said only brave men fight wolves," Ryan declared with a child's certainty. Baishan's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Your father was wise." He rose again, addressing Elsa. "The storm comes. Snow will cover my tracks, and the wolves may lose our scent. But your door is broken. I will repair it before I leave." Elsa found her voice at last. "I'm Elsa Fox. This is my son, Ryan." She gestured to the blood-stained sleeve of his buckskin shirt. "At least let me tend to that wound. It seems a poor repayment to let you bleed after what you've done." Baishan studied her for a long moment, as though assessing her sincerity. Finally, he gave a slight nod. "The wolves took something from me as well." He moved to the window, scanning the darkness outside. "My horse. She threw me when they first attacked. I have been on foot since yesterday." As Elsa gathered her meager medical supplies, she watched the Apache warrior from the corner of her eye. Everything she had ever heard about his people came rushing back. Tales of savagery, of raids and scalping and unspeakable cruelties. Yet here he stood, having risked his life to save strangers who, by all rights, should be his enemies. "Why did you help us?" she asked, as she cleaned the bite wound on his arm with whiskey from Thomas's last bottle. Baishan didn't flinch at the sting. "I heard the child's voice earlier today as I passed. Then I saw the wolves circling." His eyes, dark and fathomless, met hers. Some battles choose the warrior, not the other way around. Outside, the wind howled with a voice that matched the absent wolves. Snow began to fall in thick, heavy flakes that quickly obscured the bloody scene beyond their door. As Elsa bandaged the stranger's wound, she wondered what new dangers this night had brought to her doorstep, and why, for the first time in months, she felt something other than fear stirring in her chest. Dawn broke with painful brilliance over a transformed world. Snow had fallen throughout the night, burying the evidence of the wolf attack beneath a pristine white blanket that sparkled like scattered diamonds in the morning sun. Elsa woke to the sound of hammering and the smell of coffee, both so reminiscent of the life she'd shared with Thomas that for a disorienting moment she believed the past year had been nothing but a terrible dream. Reality returned as she rose from the bed she'd shared with Ryan, who still slept soundly. Baishan was outside repairing the door with planks salvaged from her woodpile. He had worked silently through the night, his presence marked only by occasional movement, and the fire he had kept burning while she and Ryan slept. Elsa wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders and stepped outside. The cold air stung her lungs, but the sight before her stung something deeper. Baishan had not only repaired the door, but had constructed a series of sharp wooden stakes around the perimeter of the cabin, a defensive barrier against future predators. "The wolves will think twice before they return," he said without turning, somehow sensing her presence. "You didn't sleep," she observed. "Sleep comes when it's needed, not when it's wanted." He drove the final nail into the repaired door with practiced efficiency. "Your husband built this cabin well, but the door was weak." The mention of Thomas from this stranger's lips caught Elsa off guard. "How did you know I had a husband?" Baishan finally turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "A woman alone doesn't build a cabin this size." And there, he pointed to the corner of the porch where a set of tools lay covered in canvas. "Those are a man's tools, untouched for many seasons." His perception unsettled her. "He died last spring." "The fever." Baishan nodded once, a gesture that conveyed understanding without pity, something Elsa found herself unexpectedly grateful for. "The mountains take more than they give." Ryan's excited voice broke the moment as he appeared at the doorway, eyes wide at the sight of the snow and the warrior who stood tall in its midst. "You're still here. Did you fight more wolves in the night?" A ghost of a smile touched Baishan's lips. "No more wolves, but I made sure they won't come back." He gestured to the wooden stakes. "Like a fort!" Ryan exclaimed, his excitement momentarily overshadowing his usual morning hunger. "Yes, like a fort." Baishan gathered his few possessions, a knife, a small pack, and a bow he'd apparently retrieved from the forest before dawn. "I should continue my journey now." Elsa felt a sudden, irrational panic at the thought of his departure. "The pass to Flintstone is likely blocked after last night's snow. Even if you found your horse, it would be dangerous." The words tumbled out before she could reconsider them. "At least stay until the path clears, as thanks for what you did." Baishan's dark eyes studied her, searching for the fear or revulsion he clearly expected to find. "Your neighbors would not approve of an Apache under your roof." "I have no neighbors," Elsa replied with more bitterness than she intended. "Not since Thomas died. The nearest farm is 5 miles south, and they made it clear a woman has no business trying to hold this land alone. Yet you stayed. This was to be our home, our future." She looked at Ryan, now attempting to build a small snowman near the porch steps. "I won't let them take that from him too." Something in Baishan's expression shifted, recognition, perhaps, of a kindred stubbornness. 2 days, he said finally. "Then I must continue north." Those 2 days stretched into 4 as another storm descended upon the mountains, trapping them in a world of white silence. In that time, Elsa learned more about survival than Thomas had taught her in 3 years of marriage. Baishan showed her how to set snares that yielded rabbits for their table, how to find edible roots beneath the snow, and how to recognize the subtle signs of weather changes in the color of the sky. For his part, Baishan maintained a careful distance, speaking little of himself and often disappearing into the forest for hours, only to return with game or firewood. But Elsa noticed how his stern demeanor softened around Ryan, who had taken to following the warrior like a shadow whenever possible. On the 4th evening, as they sat before the fire after Ryan had fallen asleep, Elsa finally asked the question that had been troubling her. "Why are you traveling alone in winter? Your people usually move together, don't they?" Baishan stared into the flames, and for a moment Elsa thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was low, meant only for her ears. "I have no people now. Not among the Apache, not among the white men." His fingers absently traced the scar on his cheek. 10 summers ago, I was captured by the army. They sent me east, to a school where they cut my hair and beat my language from me." A bitter smile crossed his face. "They said they were making me civilized." "You escaped?" Elsa asked. "After 5 years. I returned to find my family gone, killed, or taken to the reservation." The firelight cast shadows across his features, highlighting the pain he usually kept hidden. "I lived between worlds after that. Scout for the army sometimes, guide for hunters. The Apache called me turncoat. The whites never saw past my skin. And now?" Elsa found herself leaning closer, drawn by the rare vulnerability in his voice. "Now I go north. There are tribes there who might accept a man with no place." His eyes met hers across the small space between them. Like a woman who refuses to abandon her mountain. Something electric passed between them, recognition of a shared defiance against a world determined to dictate their place in it. Elsa felt her cheeks warm and looked away first. "My husband thought this land would make us rich," she said, changing the subject. He believed there was gold in the stream that runs behind the cabin. Was he right? Elsa shook her head. Just enough color to keep his hope alive, not enough to feed us through winter, she sighed. I should have insisted we return east after the first year, but he was so certain the next big strike was just around the corner. Baishan was quiet for a long moment before he spoke again. There is no gold in your stream, but there is something more valuable. Elsa looked up, startled. What do you mean? The water never freezes, even in the deepest cold. I have seen this before, hot springs feeding the stream underground. His expression grew thoughtful. White men pay for such waters. They believe they heal sickness. Hope and skepticism warred within her. Are you certain? I will show you tomorrow. True to his word, the next morning Baishan led Elsa and Ryan to a spot half a mile upstream where, despite the surrounding snow, steam rose from the water. He knelt, dipping his hand into the current. Feel. Warm like summer sun. When Elsa touched the water, she gasped at the unexpected heat. Thomas never mentioned this. Men looking for gold often miss what's truly valuable. There was no judgment in Baishan's voice, only a simple statement of fact. That evening, as a fifth day of shared existence drew to a close, the first interruption to their isolated world arrived in the form of hoofbeats approaching through the thinning snow. Baishan heard them first, his posture instantly alert as he moved to the window. Riders, he said, his voice tight. 3 men. Elsa felt cold fear grip her heart. Take Ryan to the back room, she instructed, reaching for Thomas's rifle. Baishan hesitated. These may be your friends. I have no friends who would come this far in winter, Elsa replied grimly. Before further discussion could occur, a voice called from outside. Mrs. Fox, are you in there? It's Jeremiah Parker from town. Elsa relaxed slightly. Parker owned the general store in Flintstone. Not exactly a friend, but not a threat either. Still, she nodded for Baishan to remain out of sight as she opened the newly repaired door. 3 men sat on horseback in her yard. Parker, Sheriff Mills, and a third man she didn't recognize who wore an expensive-looking coat despite the harsh conditions. Mrs. Fox, Parker began, clearly uncomfortable. We've come about the property. Sheriff has some papers for you. Sheriff Mills dismounted, removing his hat as he approached. Mrs. Fox, I'm afraid I have some unfortunate business. This here is Mr. Holloway from the Territorial Bank. Your husband took a loan last year that's now past due. The third man, Holloway, spoke without bothering to dismount. The bank has been patient, Mrs. Fox, but with no payments received since your husband's passing, we've been forced to initiate foreclosure proceedings. Foreclosure? Elsa repeated, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. Thomas never mentioned any loan. Nevertheless, the papers are quite clear. Holloway's tone was one of practiced sympathy that didn't reach his eyes. You have until the spring thaw to vacate the property. The bank is being generous in giving you that much time, considering the circumstances. As Sheriff Mills handed her documents, she could barely comprehend through her shock. She noticed his gaze shifting past her to something inside the cabin. His expression hardened. Mrs. Fox, is there someone else here with you? Before Elsa could answer, Baishan stepped into view, his presence causing all 3 men to tense. Sheriff Mills immediately reached for his pistol. Now hold on, Parker gasped. That's one of them Apache. Step away from him, Mrs. Fox, Sheriff Mills ordered, drawing his weapon. These savages can't be trusted. Elsa moved instinctively between the sheriff's gun and Baishan. Put that away, Sheriff. He saved my life and Ryan's from wolves 4 nights ago. He's a guest in my home. Guest? Holloway repeated with undisguised disgust. Madam, harboring Indians is against territorial law. This changes things considerably. What things? Elsa demanded. The bank was willing to grant you time out of respect for your situation, but if you're consorting with savages— He was leaving today anyway, Elsa interrupted, hating the words even as she spoke them, but desperate to prevent the situation from escalating. Baishan's face revealed nothing as he stepped forward, hands raised slightly to show he was unarmed. I am just passing through. The woman and child needed help. I will go now. Sheriff Mills kept his pistol trained on Baishan. Turn around, Indian. Hands behind your back. Sheriff, Elsa protested. The army's been looking for this one. Deserter, thief, possibly worse. Mills produced a pair of handcuffs. There's a reward for bringing him in. That's not true, Elsa insisted, though she had no way of knowing. She looked at Baishan, searching his impassive face for confirmation or denial. It's true enough, Baishan said quietly. His eyes met hers, conveying something she couldn't fully understand, an apology perhaps, or a warning. As the sheriff approached with the handcuffs, Ryan suddenly appeared from the back room, running to stand protectively in front of Baishan. Don't hurt him. He fought the wolves for us. The tableau froze, a small boy defending a warrior, a widow caught between worlds, three men representing a society that had already determined how this story must end. Holloway broke the silence. Mrs. Fox, control your child. This is not a matter for discussion. The Indian will be taken to Fort Whipple for questioning, and you will vacate this property by April 1st. What happened next occurred so swiftly that Elsa would later struggle to recall the precise sequence. Baishan moved with lightning speed, disarming Sheriff Mills before any of the men could react. But instead of using the pistol, he tossed it into the snow and sprinted toward the forest. After him, Holloway shouted as Sheriff Mills scrambled for his weapon. Parker and Mills mounted quickly, but Holloway remained, his cold eyes fixed on Elsa. I'll be back tomorrow with proper authorities. Your husband's debts are the least of your concerns now, Mrs. Fox. With that threat hanging in the air, he turned his horse and followed the others into the trees. Elsa stood in stunned silence, the foreclosure notice clutched in her trembling hand, as the sound of pursuit faded into the forest. Only when Ryan tugged at her skirt did she finally move. Will they hurt Baishan, Mama? His small face was creased with worry beyond his years. Elsa knelt before him, gathering her son close. I don't know, my love. But even as she spoke the words, she felt something hardening within her. A resolve that had begun forming the night Baishan had fought the wolves, now crystallizing into certainty. She looked toward the forest where he had disappeared, then down at the notice in her hand. They would take her home, her husband's dream, the future she had clung to. But they would not take her choice. Come, Ryan, she said, rising with new purpose. We need to pack. Are we going to town? The boy asked, confusion in his blue eyes. Elsa shook her head, her decision already made. No, we're going to help our friend. Elsa had never imagined herself capable of the action she took over the next 24 hours. With efficiency born of desperation, she gathered only what they could carry: food, warm clothing, Thomas's rifle and remaining ammunition, the small pouch of coins she had hidden beneath a loose floorboard. While Ryan napped in the afternoon, she wrote a letter to her sister in Boston, explaining as best she could the circumstances that had led to this moment. She sealed it with a prayer that someday her family would understand. By dusk, a small pack sat ready by the door, and Ryan had been dressed in every layer Elsa could manage. The boy, sensing the gravity of the situation despite his tender age, asked few questions as his mother explained they would be going on an adventure. Like the stories Papa told about the mountain men, he asked, eyes wide with excitement rather than fear. Yes, my love, just like that. Elsa forced a smile, wondering if Thomas would forgive her for what she was about to do, abandoning his dream, their home, everything they had built together. But as she looked at Ryan's innocent face, she knew her husband would have wanted their son to have more than a legacy of debt and isolation. They waited until full dark before setting out. Elsa had spent hours studying the tracks leading away from the cabin, the deep imprints of the men's horses heading east toward town, and the barely visible trail Baishan had left heading north. She prayed she was interpreting the signs correctly, as she had seen him do during their days together. The night was cold but clear, the moon providing just enough light to navigate through the forest. Ryan rode on her back, wrapped in Thomas's old coat, his small arms clinging tightly around her neck. They moved slowly, each step taking them further from everything familiar and deeper into uncertainty. "Mama, are we finding Baishan?" Ryan whispered after they had been walking for nearly an hour. "We're trying, sweetheart." Elsa adjusted her grip on him, grateful for his slight weight. "But we must be very quiet, like he taught us when we were tracking rabbits." Ryan nodded solemnly against her shoulder. "I'm being quiet as a mouse." By midnight, Elsa's strength was flagging. The trail had become increasingly difficult to follow, and doubt gnawed at her resolve. What if they couldn't find him? What if he didn't want to be found? The forest stretched endlessly in all directions, indifferent to her plight. It was Ryan who spotted the sign, a small arrangement of stones beside a fallen log that looked deliberately placed. Elsa would have walked past it, but Ryan insisted they stop. "Look, Mama, it's like the pictures Baishan made." Kneeling to examine the stones, Elsa recognized the pattern Baishan had shown Ryan while teaching him about trail markers. Her heart leaped. This had been left, intentionally, either as a general sign for those who knew how to read it or specifically for them. Either way, it confirmed they were on the right path. They found shelter for what remained of the night in the hollow of a massive fallen pine. Huddled together for warmth, Elsa watched as Ryan quickly succumbed to exhaustion, his breathing deep and regular against her chest. Sleep eluded her as doubts multiplied in the darkness. Had she condemned her son to death in the wilderness? Was she chasing a man who might well be the criminal the sheriff claimed? Yet whenever her resolve wavered, she remembered Baishan's eyes in those quiet moments by the fire, the pain and loneliness that mirrored her own, the gentle patience he had shown Ryan, the respect with which he had treated her when so many others saw only a widow to be pitied or exploited. Whatever his past, she had seen his true character in the way he had faced the wolves alone to protect strangers. Dawn found them moving again, following a series of subtle markers that Elsa became increasingly convinced were left specifically for them. By mid-morning, they had reached a rocky outcropping that offered a view of the valley below. In the distance, she could make out smoke rising from what must be Flintstone, and further east, the sprawling expanse of rangeland where cattle would graze come spring. "Are you lost?" The voice behind them nearly stopped Elsa's heart. She spun around, instinctively pulling Ryan behind her to find Baishan standing just 10 feet away, as if he had materialized from the stone itself. Relief and something else, something warmer, flooded through her. "We found you." Baishan's expression remained guarded, though his eyes softened as they fell on Ryan, who was already breaking free of his mother's grasp to run toward the warrior. "You came back!" the boy exclaimed, throwing his arms around Baishan's legs. With a gentleness that belied his imposing presence, Baishan placed a hand on Ryan's head. "What are you doing here, little one? These mountains are no place for you and your mother." Before Elsa could answer, the distant sound of dogs barking echoed through the valley. Baishan's posture instantly tensed. "Trackers, they're following your trail from the cabin." "They can't take you," Ryan declared with a child's simple certainty. "We won't let them." Baishan knelt to Ryan's level, his voice gentle but firm. "This is not your fight, brave one. You and your mother must return home before the cold claims you." "We have no home to return to," Elsa said, stepping forward. "The bank is taking the cabin. By spring we'll have nothing." She met his gaze directly. "We're coming with you." A storm of emotions crossed Baishan's normally impassive face, surprise, concern, and something else that made Elsa's cheeks warm despite the biting cold. "The path I walk is dangerous, not fit for a woman and child." "More dangerous than staying for the men who will return with anger in their hearts and the law on their side?" Elsa challenged. "They believe I helped you escape. Sheriff Mills saw how I stood between you and his gun." She took another step closer. "We've already chosen our path, Baishan. The only question is whether we walk it together or alone." The barking grew louder, jolting them back to the immediate danger. Baishan's decision came swiftly. "We must move quickly then, the storm returns by nightfall." He shouldered the pack Elsa had been carrying and lifted Ryan into his arms. "Stay close. Step only where I step." For the next several hours, they traversed terrain that grew increasingly rugged, following game trails too narrow and steep for horses. Baishan moved with the confidence of one who had studied these mountains intimately, occasionally pointing out plants or rock formations to Ryan, who absorbed each lesson with eager attention, despite the gravity of their flight. As predicted, the storm descended upon them just as the light began to fade. Snow fell in thick, disorienting curtains, and the temperature plummeted. Elsa's legs burned with exhaustion, but she pressed forward, drawing strength from the sight of Ryan secure in Baishan's powerful arms. "There," Baishan finally said, gesturing toward what appeared to be nothing more than a shadow among the rocks. As they drew closer, Elsa realized it was the entrance to a small cave, well hidden from casual observation. Inside, the space opened enough for them to stand upright, though it extended only about 15 feet into the mountainside. Evidence of previous occupation, a small fire pit ringed with stones, a stack of dry wood, suggested this was a place Baishan had used before. "My place of waiting," he explained as he set Ryan down and began preparing a fire. "When the army hunts too close, I come here." "How often are you hunted?" Elsa asked, helping Ryan remove his snow-covered outer layers. Baishan's hands worked methodically with the kindling. "Since I left the reservation 3 summers ago, always." The spark caught, illuminating his face with golden light. "But this is the first time they have hunted me with such determination." "Because of us," Elsa realized aloud. "Because I interfered with white justice," he corrected gently. "The law you spoke of, it exists only for some." As the fire grew, casting dancing shadows on the cave walls, Ryan's exhaustion finally claimed him. He fell asleep, curled against Elsa's side, his small face peaceful despite the circumstances. In the relative quiet that followed, with only the crackling of flames and the muffled howl of wind outside, Elsa found herself studying Baishan's profile, the strong jaw, the deep-set eyes that reflected both the fire's light and some inner flame of his own. "Tell me what waits in the north," she said softly, not wanting to wake Ryan. Baishan was silent for so long that Elsa thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of hard-won hope. "There are places where the mountains meet the sky, where even the army fears to follow. Tribes there, Blackfoot, Crow, who still remember the old ways, but have learned to live with the new world pushing against their borders." His eyes met hers across the fire. A man caught between worlds might find peace there, perhaps even a place to belong. And a woman with a child? Would they find peace there too? The question hung between them, laden with unspoken meaning. Baishan's expression softened, the stoic mask slipping to reveal vulnerability that matched her own. "It would not be easy," he said finally. "The journey is long, the dangers many, and at the end, no certainty awaits, only possibility. Possibility is more than we had yesterday." Elsa found herself moving closer to him, drawn by something she couldn't name. "When Thomas died, I thought all possibilities died with him. I remained on that mountain because I couldn't imagine any other future." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "But then, you fought the wolves at our door." Baishan's hand moved slowly, hesitantly, to cover hers where it rested on the stone floor between them. The touch was gentle, almost reverential, as though he feared she might pull away. "I fought many battles before that night," he said, his voice equally soft, "but none that mattered as much." The confession, simple yet profound, broke something open inside Elsa, a dam holding back emotions she had suppressed since Thomas's death. Tears came unbidden, not of grief, but of relief, of recognition. Here, in this hidden place, with danger at their backs and uncertainty ahead, she had found something she thought lost forever: connection, understanding, the spark of a future not defined by what had been taken from her, but by what might yet be possible. Baishan's free hand rose to her face, calloused fingers brushing away tears with unexpected tenderness. "You should rest," he murmured, though he made no move to withdraw. Elsa leaned into his touch, her eyes never leaving his. "And if I'm not tired?" The question held an invitation, tentative but unmistakable. For a heartbeat neither moved. Then, with the same deliberate care he had shown in all things, Baishan leaned forward until his forehead rested against hers, breath mingling in the narrow space between them. "Then we talk of possibilities," he whispered, "until sleep finds us both." Outside, the storm raged on, burying their tracks beneath layers of new snow. Inside the small cave, warmed by fire and newfound hope, Elsa Fox made peace with her decision. "Let me continue from that point properly. I'll pick up right where we left off." Outside, the storm raged on, burying their tracks beneath layers of new snow. Inside the small cave, warmed by fire and newfound hope, Elsa Fox made peace with her decision. The storm lasted 3 days, a blessing in disguise that erased all traces of their passage through the mountains. During this time of forced seclusion, the cave became a world unto itself, a place where past and future seemed suspended, leaving only the present moment. Ryan thrived in this strange circumstance, absorbing Baishan's teachings with an eagerness that transformed him. The warrior taught him to make simple snares, to identify animal tracks pressed into the snow near the cave entrance, to listen to the mountain's many voices. In return, the child offered something Baishan had clearly been without for too long: unconditional acceptance, curiosity without judgment, and the simple joy of shared discovery. Elsa watched their growing bond with a mixture of wonder and trepidation. She had thought herself alone in raising her son, carrying the weight of his future solely on her shoulders. Now she witnessed another kind of guidance taking root, one Thomas could never have provided, yet one Ryan clearly needed. On the fourth morning, they awoke to silence, the storm having finally exhausted itself during the night. Baishan left at first light to scout their surroundings, returning midday with both news and fresh rabbit for their meal. "The valley is clear," he reported as he prepared the meat. "No sign of trackers. The storm has pushed them back to town." "But they'll return when the weather clears," Elsa said. "Not a question, but a certainty." Baishan nodded. "They will. Men like Sheriff Mills do not surrender easily what they believe is theirs by right." His dark eyes met hers. "We should leave tomorrow at dawn. There is a trading post 3 days north where we can obtain supplies for the longer journey." 3 days through snow this deep? Elsa glanced at Ryan, who was practicing the knots Baishan had taught him with a piece of rawhide. 2 days for a man alone. A ghost of a smile touched Baishan's lips. 3 for a family. The word family hung in the air between them, unexpected, yet somehow not out of place. Elsa felt warmth bloom in her chest despite the cave's persistent chill. That evening, as Ryan slept deeply after a day of excited preparation, Elsa and Baishan sat side by side at the cave entrance, watching stars emerge in a sky washed clean by the storm. "There's something you should know," Baishan said after a comfortable silence, "about why the sheriff pursues me with such determination." Elsa turned to study his profile, strong and proud against the night sky. "You don't need to explain. I do." His voice was gentle but firm. "Before you commit to this path, you should know what lies behind us." He took a deep breath. 3 months ago, I guided a hunting party from the east, wealthy men seeking trophies in unfamiliar territory. One of them, a man named Holloway, became separated from the group. Elsa started at the name. "Holloway? The banker?" Baishan nodded. "His younger brother, Edmund. When we found him, he was in a bad way, leg broken, feverish. I carried him for 2 days back to civilization." His jaw tightened. "At Fort Whipple, while I slept, he claimed I had attacked him, stolen their supplies, left him to die. His word against mine. But why would he lie? After you saved him?" Baishan's expression darkened. "I had witnessed something in the forest, something not meant for anyone's eyes. Edmund Holloway and another man from the party, hunting not deer or elk, but people. A family from the reservation, trying to return to their ancestral lands." His voice dropped lower. "I arrived too late to save them, but not too late to see the killers." Horror washed over Elsa as the full implications became clear. "And his brother, the banker, he's protecting him. The Holloways have powerful friends in the territory. The army was already looking for a reason to bring me in. Edmund gave them one, and his brother made sure the reward was high enough to keep men searching." Baishan's eyes, reflecting starlight, found hers. "Now you understand the danger. It is not just the law that follows us, but men who will not allow their crimes to be spoken of." Rather than fear, Elsa felt a surge of righteous anger. "Then we must reach somewhere beyond their influence, somewhere you can tell your truth." Baishan's hand found hers in the darkness. "There may be no such place in this territory, perhaps not in this country. Then we keep moving until we find it." Elsa's fingers intertwined with his, the gesture both promise and defiance. "Ryan and we've already chosen our path." The look Baishan gave her then contained something she hadn't seen since Thomas's early days of courting: hope, admiration, and a longing that mirrored her own. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he leaned closer until their lips met in a kiss as gentle as falling snow, tentative at first, then deepening as Elsa responded with unexpected certainty. When they finally parted, breathless, Baishan rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought to find such courage in these mountains," he whispered. "Nor I such kindness," she replied softly. They departed at first light, Ryan bundled so thoroughly he resembled a small bear cub more than a boy. Baishan had fashioned crude snowshoes for them all, making the deep drifts manageable if still challenging. They moved steadily northward, following ridgelines when possible to avoid the deeper snow of the valleys. By the second day, Elsa had found rhythm in the journey, her body adjusting to the constant movement, her mind settling into a focused awareness of their surroundings. Ryan alternated between riding on Baishan's strong shoulders and walking beside his mother, his complaints few despite the difficult conditions. As the sun began its descent on the third day, Baishan paused atop a ridge, pointing to a thin column of smoke rising from the valley below. "The trading post. We should reach it by nightfall." Elsa shielded her eyes against the glare of sun on snow. "Will it be safe?" "Samuel Gray runs it, a half-crow man who trades with all sides but takes none. He has no love for the army or territorial authorities." Baishan adjusted Ryan's position on his shoulders. "But we should approach with caution nonetheless." The trading post proved to be a sturdy log structure, surrounded by smaller outbuildings. As they drew closer in the fading light, Elsa noted the eclectic collection of items displayed on the wide porch. Snowshoes similar to those Baishan had made, animal pelts, tools, and bundles of dried herbs. The place spoke of practicality and survival rather than profit. A tall man with graying hair pulled into a long braid emerged as they approached, a shotgun held casually but visibly at his side. His weathered face, which carried both European and native features, revealed nothing as he watched their approach. "Been a while, Baishan," he called when they were within earshot. "Didn't expect to see you before spring, especially not with company." His sharp eyes assessed Elsa and Ryan with undisguised curiosity. "The situation changed, Samuel," Baishan replied, setting Ryan down gently. "We need shelter for the night. Supplies for a longer journey." Samuel Gray's gaze lingered on Elsa. "Mrs. Fox," she supplied, lifting her chin slightly. "Elsa Fox. This is my son, Ryan." Something like approval flickered across the trader's face. "Well, Mrs. Fox, you've picked interesting traveling companions." He stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. "Come in. Night's too cold for standing on ceremony." The interior of the trading post was warm and surprisingly well ordered. Shelves lined the walls, stocked with everything from ammunition to preserved foods. A pot of stew simmered on a large iron stove, filling the space with a savory aroma that made Ryan's eyes widen with hunger. "The boy looks half-starved," Samuel observed, setting aside his shotgun. "Sit, eat, then we'll talk business." As they settled around a rough-hewn table, Elsa noticed the way Samuel and Baishan communicated, with subtle glances and nods, the language of men who had known each other long enough to read meaning in silence. After serving them generous bowls of venison stew, Samuel finally spoke. "Army patrol came through 2 days ago," he said casually, though his eyes remained sharp. "Asked if I'd seen an Apache renegade and a white woman with a child, offering good money for information." Elsa's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. Baishan's expression remained neutral. "What did you tell them?" "Told them I haven't seen anyone since before the storm." Samuel shrugged. "Wasn't a lie then. Is now, I suppose." He leaned forward, lowering his voice though they were alone in the building. "They're not just army, Baishan. There was a civilian with them, fancy coat, city manners, offering additional reward money." "Holloway," Elsa whispered, her appetite suddenly diminished. Samuel's eyebrows rose. "You know him?" "We've met," she replied grimly. "They said you stole from him, Mrs. Fox. Said this man," he nodded toward Baishan, "corrupted you, convinced you to abandon your property and join him in some criminal enterprise." Ryan, who had been quietly devouring his stew, looked up with indignation. "That's not true. Baishan fought the wolves for us." Samuel's expression softened as he regarded the child. "Did he now?" He returned his attention to Baishan. "Wolves, eh? That explains a few things." "Not enough," Baishan replied. "We need to move further north, beyond their reach." The trader nodded thoughtfully. "That would be wise, but not tomorrow." He rose, moving to the window to peer out into the darkness. "Storm's coming back, bigger this time. You'll stay here until it passes." "We've already imposed," Elsa began, but Samuel waved her protest aside. "I've got a back room. Simple, but warm. Been empty since my daughter married a trapper and moved to British territory." Something shifted in his expression. Concern, perhaps. "Besides, you'll need more than those crude packs to make it through the mountains this time of year." Over the next 2 days, as the promised storm descended with even greater fury than its predecessor, Samuel Gray proved to be more than just a reluctant host. He outfitted them with proper winter gear, boots, coats, blankets, accepting Elsa's meager coins with obvious reluctance. More valuable than the supplies, however, was his knowledge of the territory ahead. "There's a mission 3 days north," he explained over maps spread across his table. "Run by a Jesuit priest who asks few questions. From there, you follow the river another week until you reach Crow territory. My wife's people," he added with a nod toward a portrait of a dignified native woman that hung on the wall. "I've written a letter that should ensure you safe passage." On the evening before their planned departure, as Ryan slept soundly in the back room, Samuel produced a bottle of whiskey and 3 glasses. "One for the trail," he said, pouring generous measures. Elsa accepted the glass with thanks, though she rarely indulged in spirits. The warmth of the alcohol spread through her, as Samuel studied her with renewed interest. "You're not what I expected," he said finally. "And what did you expect?" she asked. "When Baishan said he was traveling with a white woman and child?" Samuel chuckled. "Someone frightened, someone he'd had to convince or coerce." He raised his glass in a small salute. "Instead, I find a woman who looks at the wilderness ahead with clear eyes, knowing exactly what she's chosen." Elsa felt Baishan's hand cover hers on the table, a gesture of pride and support that sent warmth through her that had nothing to do with the whiskey. "The wilderness doesn't frighten me," she said. "Not anymore." Samuel nodded approvingly. "Good, because what lies ahead?" His words cut off abruptly as the sound of approaching horses broke through the howling wind outside. Baishan was on his feet instantly, moving to the window with practiced stealth. "4 riders," he reported, his voice tense. "Lanterns." "Get to the back room," Samuel ordered, reaching for his shotgun. "There's a trapdoor beneath the rug. Storage cellar. Go, now." Elsa didn't hesitate, hurrying to wake Ryan while Baishan gathered their supplies. The boy, confused but sensing the urgency, remained silent as they descended into the dark space beneath the trading post floor. Baishan pulled the trapdoor closed, just as the sound of pounding on the main door echoed through the building. The cellar was small and musty, illuminated only by thin shafts of light filtering through cracks in the floorboards above. Through these slivers, Elsa could see Samuel moving about, taking his time to answer the insistent knocking. "Coming, coming. A man can't even enjoy his supper in peace these days," she heard him grumble convincingly. The door opened, bringing with it a gust of cold air and the sound of multiple sets of boots stomping snow onto the floor. From their hiding place, Elsa could make out only fragments of the scene above, the lower halves of several men, including one pair of polished boots that contrasted sharply with the soldiers' worn footwear. "Mr. Gray," a cultured voice that Elsa recognized as belonging to the elder Holloway said, "Forgive the late intrusion. We're searching for fugitives who may have passed this way." "Fugitives?" Samuel replied, his tone perfectly balanced between curiosity and disinterest. "Haven't seen anyone in a week. Storms kept sensible folk indoors." "Indeed," Holloway agreed, his boots moving further into the room. "But these particular fugitives are not sensible people. An Apache renegade, and a woman who has abandoned her responsibilities. They've been traveling with a child, a situation of great concern to the territorial authorities." In the darkness of the cellar, Ryan pressed closer to Elsa, his small body trembling slightly. Baishan placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder, his touch steady and calming. Above, Samuel's voice remained casual. "Well, I haven't seen any such party, but I'll keep an eye out and send word to Fort Whipple if they turn up. I'm afraid we'll need to search the premises, Mr. Gray." Another voice, likely Sheriff Mills, interjected. "Standard procedure." "Standard procedure would involve a warrant, Sheriff," Samuel countered, an edge entering his voice. "We have the authority of the territorial governor," Holloway replied smoothly. "These fugitives are considered dangerous. The Apache has already killed 1 soldier and wounded another near Prescott." Elsa felt Baishan stiffen beside her at this lie. His hand found hers in the darkness, squeezing once, a silent plea for calm. "Well, if the governor says so, I suppose I can't object," Samuel was saying, his tone resigned. "Though I don't appreciate armed men disrupting my business. Look where you must, but mind the merchandise. Some of it's spoken for by clients who won't take kindly to damage." The floorboards creaked overhead as the men began moving through the trading post. Elsa held her breath, clutching Ryan tightly to her chest as boots passed directly overhead. A prayer formed silently on her lips, not for herself, but for her son, for Baishan, even for the trader who had placed himself in danger on their behalf. One pair of boots stopped directly above them. The sheriff's voice came clearly through the boards. "What's through that door?" "My private quarters," Samuel answered, a thread of genuine tension entering his voice for the first time. "Nothing there but my bed and personal effects." "Open it," Holloway ordered. The next moment stretched like hours as footsteps moved toward the back room, the very space where they had been sleeping, where their few possessions had been hastily gathered, but might still betray their presence. Elsa's heart pounded so loudly she feared it might be heard through the floorboards. Then came the distraction that would later seem like providence. The trading post door burst open once more, bringing with it a gust of wind and snow, and a frantic voice calling, "Mr. Gray! Mr. Gray, it's my wife. The baby's coming early." The commotion above shifted instantly, attention diverted to the newcomer. Through the cracks, Elsa could see legs rushing toward the door, voices overlapping in confusion. "What's this about?" Holloway demanded. "Thompson's wife," Samuel explained, sudden urgency in his voice. "Lives 2 miles east. Been expecting their first child." To the messenger he called, "How long since the pain started, Jim?" "Hours. She's bleeding, Mr. Gray. Doc's away in Prescott. You're the only one who knows what to do." Samuel's voice took on a tone of authority that brooked no argument. "Sheriff, Mr. Holloway, I'm afraid your search will have to wait. This woman needs help now." The sound of items being gathered, bottles clinking. "You're welcome to continue looking around, but I'm leaving. Unless you want the death of a mother and child on your conscience." The silence that followed suggested even Holloway recognized the limits of his authority in the face of such an emergency. "We'll return tomorrow," he said finally, "with more men. This matter isn't concluded." "Suit yourself," Samuel replied. "Jim, get my horse ready. I'll bring my medicine bag." Within minutes, the trading post had emptied, the sounds of multiple horses departing in different directions, fading into the storm. Still, Baishan motioned for silence, his caution born of hard experience. They remained hidden for nearly an hour before the trapdoor finally opened, revealing Samuel's weathered face. "They've gone," he confirmed, helping Elsa and Ryan up from the cellar. "But they'll be back at first light, just as Holloway promised." "The woman, is she really in labor?" Elsa asked, brushing dust from Ryan's clothes. Samuel's expression was grim. "Jim Thompson has no wife. He's a trapper who lives alone 20 miles from here. But he owes me a favor, and he knows how to follow instructions." He moved quickly around the trading post, gathering supplies and packing them into travel bags. "You need to leave. Now. I've prepared horses out back." "But the storm," Elsa began. "Is perfect cover," Baishan finished, already understanding the trader's plan. "No one will expect us to travel in this weather. By the time they return, our trail will be buried." Samuel nodded. "Exactly. Head northwest, not north. There's an old mining cabin about 15 miles from here." He pressed a crude map into Baishan's hands. "It's marked. Stay there until the storm passes completely, then continue on this route." He pointed to a line drawn in charcoal. "It will add days to your journey, but it avoids the main trails. By the time you reach the mission, even the army's best trackers will have lost your scent." As they prepared to depart, bundling Ryan in layers of furs against the bitter cold, Samuel pulled Baishan aside. Elsa couldn't hear their conversation, but the two men embraced briefly before separating, a warrior's farewell. Before she could mount her horse, Samuel approached her, pressing a small leather pouch into her hand. "Silver coins," he explained. "Enough to see you to British territory if necessary." "I can't accept—" "You can and you will," he interrupted firmly, "for the boy's sake if nothing else." His eyes, wise with the experience of a life lived between worlds, held hers. "What you're doing, it takes rare courage, the kind this land needs more of, not less." Elsa felt tears threatening despite her determination to remain strong. "How can we ever repay you?" Samuel's gaze shifted to where Baishan was carefully securing Ryan to his saddle. "By living," he said simply. "By finding that place where you can all be what you're meant to be, not what others demand." He stepped back, his expression turning practical once more. "Now go. Stay to the forests where the branches will catch the snow and make tracking difficult. Trust Baishan's instincts, and your own. Minutes later, they were moving through the blinding storm, 3 riders against an endless expanse of white. Ryan, secured before Baishan on his mount, stared wide-eyed at the swirling snow, his earlier fear transformed into wonder at this new adventure. Elsa, following closely behind on a sturdy mare, felt a similar transformation within herself, fear giving way to determination, uncertainty to purpose. They had chosen their path, and together they would see where it led. The mining cabin proved to be little more than a glorified shack, but after 2 days of hard riding through the relentless storm, it felt like a palace. A small iron stove provided blessed heat, and thick walls kept the worst of the wind at bay. They remained there for 3 days, recovering their strength and planning their next move while the storm gradually subsided. Ryan, resilient as only children can be, treated the entire experience as a grand adventure. He delighted in helping Baishan repair worn spots in the cabin walls, in learning to identify the few winter birds that visited the nearby pines, in listening to stories of the crow people they hoped to reach. In those quiet days, Elsa watched her son flourish under Baishan's patient guidance, growing in confidence and capability despite, or perhaps because of, the challenges they faced. Her own relationship with Baishan deepened in ways that still surprised her. The tentative connection that had begun in the cave had grown into something more profound, a partnership founded on mutual respect and shared purpose that gradually blossomed into undeniable love. In the evenings, after Ryan had fallen asleep, they would sit close by the stove speaking in low voices of their hopes, their fears, the lives they had left behind, and the future they dared to imagine together. "Where I come from," Elsa confessed one night, "a woman like me would never be permitted to love a man like you." Baishan's hand gently traced the curve of her cheek. "And where I come from, a warrior would never show his heart to a woman of your people." His dark eyes reflected the stove's golden light. "Perhaps that is why we had to meet here, in the spaces between worlds." On the morning of their departure from the cabin, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in over a week, casting the snow-covered landscape in dazzling brightness. As they prepared the horses, Baishan suddenly went still, his gaze fixed on the ridge above them. "What is it?" Elsa asked, instantly alert to potential danger. But Baishan's expression held wonder rather than concern. "Look," he said softly, pointing. There, silhouetted against the brilliant sky, stood a magnificent elk, its massive antlers like a crown of branches catching the morning light. For a long moment, the creature surveyed them with ancient wisdom in its eyes before turning majestically and disappearing into the forest. "A good sign," Baishan said, his voice reverent. "The old ones are watching our journey." They traveled more openly now, following Samuel's alternate route through valleys and passes rarely used by white settlers. The weather remained clear but cold, slowing their progress but making the journey infinitely more bearable. Ryan, who had never ventured more than a few miles from the cabin where he was born, marveled at each new vista, each change in the landscape, as they moved steadily northward. On the 10th day of their journey, they crested a rise to find themselves looking down on a small, neat collection of buildings nestled in a protected valley. A simple cross rose from the largest structure, the mission Samuel had marked on their map. St. Francis of the Mountains, Baishan identified it. Father Matthias tends it alone most of the year. A good man, from what Samuel said. "Will he help us?" Elsa asked, uncertainty returning now that they were about to rejoin some semblance of civilization. "Samuel's letter should ensure it, but we will approach with caution nonetheless." As they rode closer, Elsa noticed Ryan had grown unusually quiet. "What's wrong, love?" she asked, bringing her horse alongside Baishan's. The boy looked up, his blue eyes troubled. "Will the people at the mission make us go back, like the sheriff wanted to?" "No, sweetheart," Elsa assured him, though her own heart clenched at the fear in his voice. "We're just stopping for supplies and rest. Then we continue our journey." "With Baishan?" Ryan pressed. "Yes," she confirmed, meeting Baishan's gaze over the child's head. "Always with Baishan." The priest who greeted them at the mission gate was younger than Elsa had expected, perhaps 35, with kind eyes and a face weathered by the harsh mountain environment. He read Samuel's letter carefully before welcoming them inside. Samuel Gray has been a friend to this mission for many years, Father Matthias explained, as he showed them to a small but comfortable room in the mission's guest quarters. Any friends of his are welcome here. Over a simple meal of bread, cheese, and dried fruit, the priest inquired about their journey with genuine interest but remarkable discretion. He asked no questions about why they traveled or what they fled from, focusing instead on practical matters, their needs, their intended route, the conditions they had encountered. Only after Ryan had been tucked into a real bed for the first time in weeks did Father Matthias broach more sensitive topics. "I received word from Fort Whipple last week," he said casually, as he poured small cups of wine for his adult guests. "They mentioned soldiers were searching for an Apache warrior and his companions." His eyes moved between Elsa and Baishan, assessing but not judging. "I presume they meant you." Baishan tensed slightly, but Elsa placed her hand on his arm. "Yes," she admitted, "though their description of our circumstances is likely less than accurate." The priest nodded thoughtfully. "I find that is often the case with official accounts." He sipped his wine before continuing. "I should tell you that I am required to report all visitors to the territorial authorities. A condition of maintaining this mission in these troubled times." Elsa felt her heart sink. "I understand. We'll leave at first light." Father Matthias raised a hand to stop her. "I said I am required to report. I didn't say when." A small smile played at his lips. "My next report isn't due to be delivered until the spring thaw. By then I expect you'll be well beyond their jurisdiction." The relief that washed through Elsa was so profound, she felt momentarily lightheaded. "Thank you, Father." "Don't thank me," he replied simply. "I serve a higher authority than territorial governors or army commanders, one that values justice and mercy above human laws." His gaze moved to Baishan. "Samuel's letter mentioned you seek Crow territory. May I ask why?" Baishan answered with measured words. "I lived among them briefly as a young man. Their ways are different from my own people's, but they remember the old agreements between tribes. A man of mixed blood might find peace there." "And a woman and child not of their blood?" the priest asked gently. "That is less certain," Baishan acknowledged. "But we have hope." Father Matthias nodded slowly. "Hope is a powerful compass." He rose, moving to a small desk in the corner of the room. "I have something that may help." From a drawer he withdrew a sealed letter. "This is for Chief Many Horses. He is a leader among the Crow who has visited this mission several times to discuss matters of faith. He carries great influence with his people." Elsa accepted the letter with trembling fingers. "Why would you do this for us? You barely know us." The priest's expression turned solemn. "I have spent 15 years in these mountains, Mrs. Fox. I have seen the way justice bends according to a man's wealth or the color of his skin. I have buried too many innocents, native and white alike, killed by hatred and fear." He looked between them, his gaze steady. "What I see before me is not something to be destroyed, but something to be protected. A family forged in adversity, choosing love over the easier path of separation and prejudice." They remained at the mission for 3 days, regaining their strength, restocking their supplies, and learning all they could about the territory that lay ahead. Father Matthias proved to be a wealth of knowledge, having traveled extensively throughout the region in his ministry. He provided maps more detailed than Samuel's, marking safe water sources, potential shelter, and areas to avoid. On the morning of their departure, the priest presented them with one final gift, a pair of sturdy mules loaded with supplies that would see them through the remainder of winter. "Consider it the mission's contribution to your journey," he said, waving away Elsa's attempts to offer payment. "I ask only one thing in return." "Anything," she promised. "When you find your place of peace, send word that you arrived safely." His eyes crinkled with a smile. "It need not be addressed to me. Simply, St. Francis of the Mountains will suffice. The knowledge that you succeeded will be reward enough." As they prepared to ride out, Ryan approached the priest with solemn purpose, offering a small carved wooden horse that Baishan had made for him during their stay. "For you," the boy said simply. "So you remember us." Father Matthias knelt to the child's level, accepting the gift with genuine appreciation. "I will treasure it, Ryan." He placed a gentle hand on the boy's head. "May God watch over your journey and bring you safely to your new home." The final leg of their journey proved to be the most arduous yet. The terrain grew increasingly wild as they moved deeper into the northern territories, following ancient paths known only to the indigenous peoples of the region. Winter maintained its grip on the land, though occasional days of surprising warmth hinted at the approaching spring. They encountered few other travelers, a testament to both the remoteness of their route and the wisdom of Samuel and Father Matthias in directing them away from established trails. Those they did meet, mostly native hunters or lone trappers, regarded them with curiosity, but generally left them unmolested after brief exchanges with Baishan in various tribal languages. On the 20th day after leaving the mission, they crested a high pass to find themselves looking down upon a broad valley cradled by mountains on all sides. Smoke rose from what appeared to be a substantial encampment near a winding river, dozens of teepees arranged in the traditional circle pattern of a Crow winter camp. "We're here," Baishan said, his voice betraying rare emotion. "The winter grounds of Chief Many Horses' band." Elsa felt a complex mix of relief, anxiety and hope as she surveyed what might become their new home. "Will they welcome us?" Baishan's expression was cautiously optimistic. "The Crow have traditionally been more accepting of outsiders than many tribes, but much has changed since I was last among them. We must approach with respect and patience." As they descended toward the valley floor, Baishan instructed them in the proper protocols, how to approach the camp, how to wait for an invitation rather than entering uninvited, how to present themselves to the tribal leaders. Ryan listened with rapt attention, practicing the few Crow words Baishan taught him with determined concentration. They were still some distance from the camp when they were spotted. 4 mounted warriors rode out to intercept them, hands resting casually but visibly on weapons. Baishan raised his empty hands in the universal gesture of peace, speaking in the Crow language as the warriors drew near. Elsa watched the exchange with trepidation, unable to understand the words but reading the body language with increasing hope, as the initial suspicion on the warriors' faces gradually shifted to cautious acceptance. One of them, clearly the leader, studied Elsa and Ryan with particular intensity, before nodding once and gesturing for them to follow. "They will take us to Many Horses," Baishan explained quietly, as they rode between their escort. "The chief remembers me from when I lived among them as a young man. It is a good sign." The camp was larger than it had appeared from a distance, at least 40 teepees arranged in a great circle, with smaller structures scattered throughout. As they rode through, Elsa was conscious of many eyes watching their progress, women pausing in their work, children stopping their play, elders studying them from the entrances of their dwellings. The atmosphere was one of wary curiosity rather than hostility, but Elsa still felt her heart racing with nervous anticipation. They were led to a large teepee at the far side of the camp, more elaborately decorated than the others, with painted symbols and hanging feathers. There they dismounted, and were instructed to wait while one of the warriors entered to announce their arrival. Ryan pressed close to Elsa's side, his earlier excitement now tempered by the reality of being surrounded by strangers whose language and customs were unfamiliar. "Are these our new friends?" he whispered. Before she could answer, the teepee flap opened, and a man emerged who could only be Chief Many Horses. Tall and powerfully built despite his apparent 60 years, he carried himself with natural authority. His face was deeply lined, telling stories of both laughter and hardship, and his dark eyes missed nothing as they swept over the newcomers. What followed was a formal exchange between Baishan and the chief, conducted entirely in the Crow language. Elsa could only wait, trying to project calm confidence for Ryan's sake, while her own future hung in the balance. Finally, Baishan turned to her. "I have explained who we are and why we have come," he said quietly. "I have also presented Father Matthias's letter, which carries great weight with Many Horses. He has invited us to share his fire and tell our story more fully." Inside the chief's dwelling, they were given places of honor on woven mats near the central fire. Several other tribal leaders were present, along with an elderly woman whom Many Horses introduced as his wife, Stone Flower. To Elsa's surprise, the chief addressed her directly in halting but understandable English. "Father Matthias speaks well of you," Many Horses said, his deep voice measured and thoughtful. "He says you left your people to walk a difficult path. This takes courage." Elsa nodded respectfully. "The path chose us as much as we chose it, Chief Many Horses." A flicker of approval crossed the chief's weathered face. He turned his attention to Ryan, who sat wide-eyed but remarkably composed between his mother and Baishan. "And the boy. He has his mother's spirit." "And more," Baishan answered with quiet pride. "He faced wolves and winter storms without complaint. He learns quickly and sees with clear eyes." Many horses studied Ryan for a long moment before addressing him directly. "What do you seek here, small warrior?" Ryan glanced at his mother, then at Baishan, drawing strength from their presence. "A home," he answered simply. "With my mother and Baishan." The chief's expression remained inscrutable, but his wife, Stoneflower, leaned forward with a softening in her eyes. She spoke rapidly in their language to many horses, who listened with evident respect before returning his attention to the visitors. "My wife says the boy has a good heart. This is important." He gestured toward Baishan. "This man I have known since he was little older than your son. He lived among us for 2 seasons before his path led elsewhere. He learned our ways with respect." The chief's piercing gaze returned to Elsa. "But you are a mystery, woman of the white eyes. Why should the Crow people welcome you when your own kind rejected you?" It was a fair question, one Elsa had anticipated yet still found difficult to answer. She chose her words carefully, aware that her future, and more importantly Ryan's, depended on what she said next. "I cannot speak for all my people, just as you would not claim to speak for all of yours," she began. "What I know is this. I was taught to fear those who looked different, to believe they were somehow less worthy of dignity and happiness. Then my husband died, and I learned that many of my own kind saw a woman alone as less worthy too." Her eyes met the chief's without wavering. "When Baishan came to our door, he didn't see a white woman. He saw a mother and child in danger. He risked his life for strangers who by all rights should have been his enemies." She reached for Baishan's hand, drawing strength from his solid presence. "I don't ask to be welcomed because I reject my people. I ask to be judged by my actions, by the path I've chosen to walk alongside this man, by my willingness to learn your ways with the same respect he showed." A long silence followed her words. Many horses exchanged glances with the other tribal leaders, a wordless communication taking place that Elsa could not interpret. Finally, the chief spoke again. "Winter is ending soon. When spring comes, we will move to our summer hunting grounds near the great river. Until then, you may stay among us as guests." He held up a hand to forestall any premature gratitude. "This is not yet acceptance. It is opportunity, to learn our ways, to show your worth, to determine if this is truly the path the Creator has set for you." "We ask for nothing more," Baishan replied with formal dignity. Stoneflower spoke again, this time addressing Elsa directly through her husband's translation. "You and the boy will stay in the women's lodge until a proper place can be prepared. There, the women will teach you our ways. Baishan will join the men's council and hunting parties, as he did in years past." The elderly woman's eyes crinkled with unexpected warmth. It is good for a boy to have both worlds in his learning. And so began their integration into the Crow community, a process that was neither simple nor swift, but unfolded with a natural rhythm that matched the changing of seasons. Elsa and Ryan were given a small teepee on the eastern edge of the camp, close enough to participate in community life, yet separate enough to allow them time to adjust. The first weeks were the most difficult. Despite Stoneflower's sponsorship, many of the women regarded Elsa with suspicion, some openly questioning her presence among them. The language barrier created constant challenges, though Ryan, with a child's adaptability, began picking up Crow words and phrases far more quickly than his mother. Elsa threw herself into learning, not just the language, but the intricate skills that defined a woman's place in the tribe. She learned to prepare hides, to weave baskets from reeds gathered along the riverbank, to identify edible plants that were beginning to emerge as spring softened the land. Each small success earned grudging respect from the women who taught her. Each failure met with patience from some and barely concealed satisfaction from others. Baishan faced his own challenges among the men, where his years away had created a distance that needed to be bridged. Yet his knowledge of both Apache and white ways proved valuable to the council, especially as they discussed how to navigate the increasingly complex relationships with neighboring tribes and encroaching settlers. Throughout these early days, it was Ryan who served as their most effective ambassador. Children, less burdened by history and prejudice, accepted him into their games with casual ease. He returned to their teepee each evening full of new words, new friends, new stories, a living bridge between worlds that reminded the adults of possibilities beyond old boundaries. As many horses had predicted, spring arrived with transformative power. The snow retreated up the mountainsides, wildflowers carpeted the valley floor, and preparations began for the move to summer hunting grounds. This massive undertaking, breaking down the winter camp, packing possessions onto travois pulled by horses, moving an entire community across miles of challenging terrain, provided Elsa with her first real opportunity to prove her value to the tribe. Having spent years adapting to frontier life, she worked tirelessly alongside the other women, demonstrating physical endurance and practical ingenuity that gradually earned their respect. By the time the summer camp was established near the Great River, Elsa found herself included in gatherings where she had previously been merely tolerated. Women who had once avoided her now sought her help with certain tasks, particularly those involving Ryan, who had become something of a favorite among the grandmothers of the tribe. The summer months brought a period of relative prosperity. Hunting parties, including Baishan, returned with abundant game. The river provided fish, the surrounding forests yielded berries and medicinal plants, and for the first time since leaving her cabin in Arizona, Elsa felt the gnawing anxiety of survival begin to recede. One warm evening, as the community gathered for a celebration of a successful buffalo hunt, Stoneflower approached Elsa with an unexpected gift, a beautifully beaded dress in the crow style, adorned with symbols that Elsa had come to recognize as representing family and protection. "For the river ceremony," the elderly woman explained through the increasingly confident translation of a young girl named Morning Bird, who had appointed herself Ryan's special friend and teacher. "Tomorrow, you join the women at the sacred bend. Many horses says it is time." The significance of this invitation was not lost on Elsa. The river ceremony was traditionally open only to women of the tribe, a ritual of purification and blessing that marked full acceptance into the community. That night, as Ryan slept peacefully, exhausted from a day of swimming and fishing with the other children, Elsa shared her news with Baishan. "Stoneflower believes the council will make their decision soon," she said, her voice a mix of hope and apprehension. "About whether we can stay permanently." Baishan nodded, his expression thoughtful as he stoked their small fire. "Many horses have said similar things to me. The summer gathering of the 3 crow bands approaches. Decisions about new members of the tribe are traditionally made then. Do you think they'll accept us?" Elsa asked the question that had lingered unspoken between them for months. "They will accept Ryan without question," Baishan replied with certainty. "He is young enough to become truly crow in spirit. For us," he reached across the fire to take her hand, "the signs are favorable, but nothing is certain until the council speaks." The river ceremony the next day proved to be a turning point in Elsa's journey. Standing waist-deep in the cold, rushing water alongside 24 crow women of all ages, she participated in rituals whose meaning she only partially understood, but whose power she felt deeply. As the women sang and moved in patterns dictated by ancient tradition, Elsa experienced a profound sense of connection, not just to these individuals who had gradually opened their circle to include her, but to something larger and more enduring than herself. When she emerged from the river, Stoneflower was waiting on the bank with a blanket and a rare smile. "Now you are cleansed of the past," the older woman said through Morningbird's translation. "Now you may begin." 2 weeks later, as the summer solstice approached, representatives from the other crow bands began arriving for the great gathering. The camp swelled with visitors, the nights filled with dancing and storytelling around massive bonfires. Elsa observed these proceedings with a mixture of wonder and trepidation, aware that somewhere amid the festivities, decisions were being made that would determine her family's future. On the 3rd night of the gathering, many horses summoned them to his council fire. The assembled leaders, representing all 3 bands of the Crow Nation, sat in a solemn circle, their faces illuminated by firelight as Baishan, Elsa, and Ryan took their places in the center. "We have watched you through the turning of seasons," Many Horses began, his voice carrying the weight of formal authority. "We have seen how you live, how you learn, how you respect our ways." His gaze moved between them. "The council has reached its decision." Elsa held Ryan close, feeling his small body tense with awareness of the moment's importance. Baishan sat straight and proud beside them, his expression revealing nothing of the anxiety she knew he must share. The boy Ryan will be given a crow name, Swiftwater, and accepted as a child of the tribe, many horses declared. A murmur of approval rippled through the assembled leaders. Baishan, once friend to the crow in his youth, has proven his worth again as a hunter and warrior. He too is welcome to the fire. The chief's eyes finally settled on Elsa. The woman called Elsa Fox presents a greater question. Our traditions speak little of accepting those with white blood into our circle, a pause that stretched Elsa's nerves to breaking. Yet traditions must sometimes bend to accommodate new truths. Stoneflower spoke then, her aged voice carrying surprising strength. Though Elsa could not understand the words, the tone was unmistakably one of advocacy. Several other women added their voices, including some who had initially been among Elsa's most skeptical observers. Many horses listened to this feminine chorus with evident respect before raising a hand for silence. It is decided. Elsa Fox will be known as Woman Who Chose and will be accepted as Crow, with all the responsibilities and protections this entails. His stern expression softened slightly. The three of you will form a new lodge within our band, recognized as family under our laws. Relief flooded through Elsa with such force that she momentarily forgot the formal dignity expected in such proceedings. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks as she bowed her head in gratitude, one arm around Ryan, the other reaching for Baishan's hand. Later that night, in the privacy of the new, larger teepee that had been prepared for them at the edge of the summer camp, Elsa finally gave full voice to the emotions of the day. Ryan had fallen asleep almost instantly, exhausted by excitement and the ceremonial feast that had followed the council's decision. "I never thought it possible," she whispered as Baishan held her close beside their small fire. "To find acceptance so complete, to be given a place among people who have every reason to reject us." "The crow understands something many do not," Baishan replied, his fingers gently stroking her hair. "That strength comes from embracing difference, not fearing it. That survival depends on adaptation." His arms tightened around her. "That love recognizes no boundaries drawn by men." "Woman Who Chose," Elsa repeated her new name thoughtfully. "Do you think they understand what I really chose?" Baishan smiled, the firelight catching the rare expression and transforming his usually solemn face. "They understand perfectly. You did not merely choose to leave one life behind. You chose to embrace another fully. You chose a different way of seeing the world." His hand moved to cup her face. "You chose us. I would choose you again," she whispered, "through every storm, every danger, every uncertainty." As their lips met in a kiss that sealed this renewed promise, Elsa felt the last lingering doubts dissolve from her heart. The path that had begun with wolves at her door had led to this moment of profound belonging, not just to a place or a people, but to a love that had defied every boundary society had constructed to prevent it. Outside their teepee, the summer stars wheeled overhead, illuminating a landscape that had once seemed threatening, but now felt like home. In the distance, wolves called to one another across the valley. Not harbingers of danger now, but fellow travelers sharing the vast wilderness. Ryan mumbled in his sleep, a mixture of English and Crow words that represented the bridge he would become between worlds. Within these simple walls of hide and wood, Elsa Fox, now Woman Who Chose, had found what her heart had sought long before she could name it. Not merely safety or survival, but a place where courage was honored, where difference was strength, where love could flourish in the spaces between worlds. The Apache warrior who had faced the wolves alone had not just protected her child that winter night. He had opened a door to a future she could never have imagined, one where the howling of wolves became not a warning, but a reminder of the night her heart had begun to change forever. 5 years later, the autumn sun cast golden light across the valley where the crows' fall encampment spread along the river's edge. Elsa, still called Woman Who Chose by most, though the elders had recently begun shortening it simply to Chosen, stood outside her family's teepee, watching the children play along the riverbank. Ryan, now 10 years old and known exclusively by his crow name, Swiftwater, led the game with confident authority, his sun-bronzed skin and long black hair making him nearly indistinguishable from his tribal brothers and sisters. Only his blue eyes, startlingly vivid against his weathered face, revealed his mixed heritage, a heritage he wore with unself-conscious pride. Beside him ran a smaller figure, a girl of 4 with glossy black hair and her father's copper complexion, but with eyes the exact shade of her mother's. Little Stone, named in honor of Stone Flower, who had passed to the spirit world the previous winter, possessed her brother's fearlessness and her father's quiet dignity, combined with a laugh that could melt the heart of even the most stern tribal elder. "They grow strong," Baishan's voice came from behind her as his arms encircled her waist. 5 years among the Crow had softened the vigilant tension he had carried when they first met, though his watchful nature remained, a valuable trait in a world still filled with uncertainties. "Strong and happy," Elsa agreed, leaning back against him. Her hand moved unconsciously to her belly, where the first subtle roundness hinted at their 3rd child, expected with the spring thaw. Stone Flower would be proud of her namesake. Baishan nodded, his chin resting on top of Elsa's head as they watched their children. She would be proud of all we have built. What they had built extended beyond their immediate family. Over the years, Elsa's knowledge of healing plants, expanded through Stone Flower's teachings and her own experimentation, had earned her respect that transcended cultural boundaries. Settlers from the small trading post 20 miles downriver often sought her remedies, creating an unexpected bridge between communities that might otherwise have remained separate and suspicious. Baishan had risen to become one of many horses' trusted advisors, particularly in negotiations with the territorial authorities, whose influence continued to expand northward. His unique background, understanding both native and white perspectives, had proven invaluable as the Crow navigated the complex politics of a changing world. Together, they represented something rare and precious, proof that different worlds could not merely coexist, but strengthen one another. "A letter came with the traders yesterday," Baishan said, still watching the children play. "From the mission." Elsa turned in his arms, surprised. "From Father Matthias. Is all well?" "He sends good wishes and news." A smile touched Baishan's lips. "Samuel Gray has finally retired from his trading post. He has come to live at the mission, helping Father Matthias with his work among the tribes." Warmth spread through Elsa at the thought of the 2 men who had risked so much to help them find their path. "I'm glad. They deserve peace in their later years." "There was other news as well," Baishan continued, his expression growing more serious. "Edmund Holloway was killed last year, shot during a card game in Prescott. His brother returned east shortly after. The names, once so terrifying, now seem to belong to another lifetime. Shadowy figures from a past that grew more distant with each passing season." "Do you ever wonder what happened to the cabin?" Elsa asked. "To Thomas's dream of gold?" Baishan shook his head. "The past is like the river behind us. It carries us to where we stand, but we cannot return against its current." His hand joined hers over their unborn child. "Our gold is here." From the riverbank, Ryan called out, waving excitedly for his parents to join the game. Little Stone echoed her brother, her high voice carrying clearly across the distance. Without hesitation, Baishan took Elsa's hand, and together they moved toward their children, not just the family they had made, but the future they had chosen. As they reached the laughing group, Elsa glanced toward the distant mountains where the first dusting of snow hinted at winter's approach. Somewhere far to the south lay the small cabin where this journey had begun, where a desperate widow and her son had faced the howling night alone until an unexpected guardian had appeared at their door. The wolves would return to these northern mountains soon, their howls echoing through the valleys as they had that fateful night. But Elsa would listen to their voices now, not with fear but with gratitude, for the danger that had become opportunity, for the stranger who had become beloved, for the moment when an Apache warrior had faced the wolves alone to protect her child, and changed her heart forever. The end. Dear listener, when twilight settles and you find yourself alone with these whispered tales, perhaps you've noticed something familiar stirring within you, like an old memory suddenly made fresh again. The wolves that surrounded Elsa's cabin weren't so different from the doubts that sometimes circle our thoughts at 3 a.m., are they? Those moments when the silence grows too loud, and yesterday's certainties feel like faded photographs. At 60, 70, 80 years of walking this earth, you've faced your share of winters. You've felt the bite of loss, perhaps a partner whose hand you still reach for in sleep, friends whose laughter now echoes only in memory, or simply the gradual surrender of what once came easily. These are the wolves of our later years. But here's what I believe with my whole heart. You are Baishan standing against the pack. You are Elsa choosing a path others couldn't understand. You are Ryan seeing possibility where others saw only danger. The most magnificent truth about growing older isn't what we lose but what we finally understand. Like Samuel Gray's trading post, weather-beaten perhaps, but filled with treasures those rushing by would never notice. Your life holds wisdom that this hurried world desperately needs. Tonight, as moonlight slips through your window, remember this. The most beautiful love stories don't always begin in youth. The most important journeys don't always follow maps. And sometimes, the family we create in the winter of our lives brings the warmest spring we've ever known. Your hands may bear the marks of years, but they are still capable of building something new. Your heart may carry scars, but it remains your most reliable compass. And though society often turns its gaze toward younger faces, your story continues to unfold with chapters potentially more rich and nuanced than all that came before. Rest tonight knowing you are not just surviving your winters, you are becoming exactly who you were meant to be all along. The wolves may howl, but dawn always follows. With a heart full of stories still untold. Wild West Whispers team, thank you so much for staying with us until the very end. If this story touched your heart even a little, we invite you to like the video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to our channel. Your support truly means the world to us and helps keep our passion alive. To continue bringing you emotional stories filled with love, healing, courage, and transformation. And don't forget, at the end of this video, you'll see a suggestion for another story from our channel. Click it and discover another deeply moving tale that just might surprise you.